So it may not be the person sending a letter who did the murders, but it could be a reporter coming up with that.
That's right.
Coming up with writing the letter or the
writing the letter. We think the whole letter was written.
So it could be a setup.
Yeah.
So we still don't know. They say it could be a member of the royal family. Could be, but we still don't know. It's over a letter or the
writing the letter. We think the whole letter was written.
So it could be a setup.
Yeah.
So we still don't know. They say it could be a member of the royal family. Could be, but we still don't know. It's over 100 years. Whatever papers have come up, and we still don't know who Jack the Ripper was.
Well, the police, we've always said who Jack the Ripper was, but no one listens to us.
Who's that?
Well, the whole name of the game with Jack the Ripper is writing books about it and making money out of it.
Mm-hmm.
The truth is totally coincidental to authors. You know, if you write a book and say Jack the Ripper was an inconsequential nobody will buy the book. Mm-hmm. If you write a book and say Jack the Ripper was royalty, Prince Albert Victor, the Duke of Clarence, or you say it was Sir William Gull, the Queen's physician, or you say it was a Masonic conspiracy, that sells books. It's all rubbish, but it sells books. We've always said, who did the police at the time think Jack the Ripper was? Now, you will obviously know that quite often a police officer has got a very good idea who committed a crime. He may not have enough evidence to prove it in court, but if you draw the file of an unsolved crime, there is the detective's notes who says he thinks he knows it is. And quite often they do know who's done a crime, but they can't prove it.
So who's the person?
So we look back, and when you look back through all the bits and pieces that have ever been written about the people in charge of the case at the time, were all convinced that Jack the Ripper was a man called Aaron Kosminski. Kosminski was a Polish Jew. He'd contracted syphilis from a prostitute. There was no cure for syphilis in those days, sent you insane. He went around killing prostitutes. He was arrested after the 5th murder. He was totally unfit to plead, totally insane. He was put into a mental institution. He died there 7 years later. All the murders stopped. That was the end of that. And as far as the police officers in charge of the case were concerned, Kosminski was the Ripper. But it is not a particularly exciting story, and people will not listen to it. They will still want to write their books claiming it was all sorts of people. But as far as the police were concerned,
the Masonic terms and and wasn't that also Leather Apron? Wasn't that his nickname?
Yeah, Leather Apron. No, that Leather Apron was the nickname of a man called Jack Pizer. Jack Pizer was arrested after the 2nd murder. But that was Leather Apron. He had nothing to do with it.
Right.
He was exonerated by the police at the time. But there was a tremendous, at that time in 1880s, tremendous anti-Semitic feeling in the East End of London. And Pizer was a Jew. And in fact, when Pizer was arrested, the word went up around at the East End of London that they'd caught Jack the Ripper. And all he was doing was being interviewed. He hadn't been charged or anything. And the word went up around London that they'd caught Jack the Ripper and he was a Jew. And actually people, Londoners, went out attacking Jews purely because of this. The man was released, it wasn't him. But there was that was tremendous anti-Semitic feeling about this. And I suspect when the police realised that that they thought that Kosminski, who again was a Jew, was there. This is why it was never made public, because if it had come out that this man was a Jew, the man we thought it was a Jew, a lot of innocent Jewish people would have been attacked and maybe killed because of the ridiculous way they went about. The public just took up the cry and killed people just because they thought this man was a Jew.
Right. We are running a little short on time because we have another meeting, another interview coming up. Let's take boy, there's just so much, and I'm sorry, folks, we can't get to it all, but
well, we're becoming more up to date in this room. We've moved out of the old room. We're coming into a more modern times. And a lot of the cases in here are quite historic from London's point of view. We have a gun in the corner there, a 38, which was the gun a lady called Ruth Ellis used in 1955. And Ruth Ellis was the last woman to hang in this country. So that is historic, being the last woman to hang.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just looking at the brain. Is that a brain?
In the jar there is a brain. That's the brain of a man called Percy Casserly, and it was produced in court. That brain in that jar was produced in court by one of our very famous pathologists called Sir Bernard Spilsbury, and he produced the brain to show could you see the black stick going through? There is a black stick going through the back of the brain, and he produced that stick in court to show the position of the bullet, the way the bullet went through the brain, to disprove this man's story. The man said he was fighting in a close quarter fight, and Spilsbury proved to get that angle through the brain, the gun had to be held by somebody standing at least 10 feet away. So it totally disproved this man's story of a close quarter fight. He was on the other side of the room when he shot this man. So they actually produced the brain in that jar in court and handed it to the judge, handed it round the jury. In those days, they did things, and we've changed a bit since then.
Is that an uncommonly large brain, or is it, this is a large brain?
No, it's not an uncommonly large brain. It is. I don't-
Smart guy, huh?
Well,
Smart woman,
I don't-
guy. guy.
Well, it is. I don't want to appear very sexist here, but it is a male brain, and male brains are always bigger than female brains. Now, it's nothing to do with intelligence.
Does
as
it
well
always
as-
help
no,
us?
no, no.
But
As well, we all
it
know.
hardly ever helps us, about that.
It's nothing to do with intelligence. It is purely because men are generally bigger than females, and so the male brain is always about an eighth bigger than a female brain. But it's got nothing to do with intelligence. But it does look, when they come out of the skull, brains always do seem to spread out and do seem much, much bigger.
Take one. Okay, moving away from the brain, folks, there is no way, and Mr. Ross, John Ross, we're running today, and he's running today, and there's no way, unless I can get back, and I don't know if I can, but we're just going to keep on going until Paula Smith of Public Relations comes in, grabs us out of here. But, folks, there's just no way we can cover there's no way we can cover everything here. It's just phenomenal. So, okay, let's move along. Here's the oven, stove, whatever.
Well, this is the case of a guy called Dennis Nielsen in this country. Now, we're coming a bit more up to date here. He killed in London between 1978 and 1983. And I suppose in this country, to relate it to something in your country, this is the
Dahmer?
closest, yeah, absolutely. This is the closest thing to Jeffrey Dahmer up in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin. This is the closest thing. Very, very similar in a lot of respects. This guy, homosexual, would pick up homosexual young men, take them back to his house. Meals, they could stay the night as they wished, but the problem was if they didn't talk to him, if they sat watching TV all night and wouldn't talk to him, he killed them, strangled them. Having strangled them, he would. It's not very pleasant, this, but he'd leave the body sitting in a chair in the lounge for about 10 days. After the 10 days, he'd put the body in the bath. As you see, we have a bath here. He'd put the body in that bath, and into that bath, put the body. He would then take the body apart. Having taken the body apart, he would then, all the bones put into black plastic sacks. He would then put those out for the refuse collector. The head he put in as alongside the bath you see here, but there's a cooker, and on top is a big large pan, saucepan, very, very large saucepan on top, and into the saucepan he'd put the head, and he would boil the head up in the saucepan to get the skin off, and then smash the skull. The internal organs he just laid, he cut all the internal organs out, the heart, liver, lungs, kidneys, intestines, took them out. He then laid those in the backyard, in between the flowers in the flower beds, didn't dig them in, and just left them there, and within 4 days that lot are gone, which has got to be animals, foxes, rats, mice, cats, ate the lot in 4 days. He's now left with just flesh, so he cut the flesh up into small pieces, put the small pieces inside the pan, boiled them up, until the flesh became a sludge which would easily flush down the lavatory, and then with the skin that was left he just stood at the lavatory with a stick poking it down, flushing the toilet, pushing it down, flushing, poking, until the whole of the human being went down the lavatory.
I see something sticking out of the top of the lid is slightly ajar. Looks like hair. No, don't tell me it's hair.
No, well, it is hair, but it's not real. There isn't a head inside there, and in fact though, interesting thing is,
I noticed the little stickums like a butterfly there and a strawberry, or it looks like something.
That's right. These little magnetic catches that you stick on the side of fridges and cookers. Yeah, there was just ordinary things stuck on the side, little magnetic
catches.
catches.
Magnetic stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Just stuck onto the cooker. But actually, when the first police officer, we went into the house, whilst Nielsen was being interviewed downstairs, a detective went upstairs and was looking around the kitchen, and the detective went up to the cooker, lifted the pot on the top, and inside was a human head, and that's how the case started.
And is this the gentleman over here? I just want to read something over here. Block drains in the North London suburb of Muswell Hill brought to an end a series of killings, usually by strangulation, of lonely young men over a period of 5 years. So is the block drains that I guess...
Well, that's how it started. Nielsen complained that the drains were blocked. Okay. A local estate agent that was looking after the property for the owner sent round. In this country, it's called a company called Dynarod. I think you call it Roto-Rooter is your company in the States. But Dynarod
and away go troubles down the drain.
Yeah, and the Dynarod went round to look at the drains. Couldn't find a blockage inside the drain in the house. Went outside into the yard. lifted a cover, went down into the sewer, and he came up with a bucket of sludge which he thought contained human remains, and he thought it because in the bucket were those 5 pieces of flesh. You see, there are 5 pieces of flesh in a plastic, it's encapsulated in a plastic block there, but those 5 pieces of flesh was what he actually found in the drain, and he thought that was human. Called police. We took it to the pathologist at the Hammersmith Hospital in West London, and he examined it, and he said, yes, that is boiled human flesh. And that is how the whole case started.
Right. And that is a photograph of the gentleman there?
That is a photograph of Dennis Nilsson, yes.
And all these people look so average and non-threatening in there, and it's just terrifying, the stories.
We're going to have to call it a day.
Okay, let's just do the hands.
Right.
Okay.
I've got other people. I've got another meeting now coming on.
Okay, folks. So I'm going to let this run a little bit, but we must look at these hands to the elbow, and then we have to let Mr. Ross go. John.
Right. We're looking at what can be described as a box. Just an ordinary box, but it's made of plastic, so you can see all the way through it from either side, all sides. It's
plexiglass, I guess.
Yes, it's like a plastic, something, yeah, whatever. It measures, I suppose, about 2 feet by 6 inches. And inside, there are a pair of arms with the hands on that are severed just below the elbow.
These are real.
Oh yes, these are real. Yes, there's nothing in here that's false. Everything in here is real. And that was a guy called John Merritt. And John Merritt murdered his mother and his wife and his mother-in-law in West London. He then fled to Germany. He was living in Germany. He'd been to prison on the continent of Europe 5 times. He'd hated it so much that he swore to himself that he would never ever allow himself to be arrested and put in prison again. But when he realised the inquiries from the detectives from this country were getting close to him in Germany, and he realised he was on the verge of being arrested, brought back and put in prison for these murders over here, he committed suicide in Germany. Now, we knew that he committed these murders over here, so we got wonderful evidence. So if John Merritt has now committed suicide in Germany, then we will close the case, we'll close the file, and we won't waste our time looking for anybody else. Mm-hmm. So we sent across to the West German police and asked the West German police if we could have that suicide's fingerprints. And they chopped the guy's arms off and sent his arms over.
So you got the arms in the mail.
Well, that's right. They arrived at Scotland Yard in a box wrapped up in brown paper through the post. Now, the interesting thing, of course, about that, it is quite legal in Germany. We could not do that in this country, and I suspect you wouldn't be able to do it in the United States. But in Germany, that is their law. And, of course, if that is their law, good luck to them. You know, you abide by the laws of the country you're in, and that is their law. They can take parts of body and just do things like that.
They couldn't just fingerprint and send it on.
I think they could have done.
And when was this? What year?
1954.
Oh, so the fingerprints, of course, were, but they sent you that?
They sent us the whole arms, yes.
Okay, there's so much more. We can't get to it, but it goes on, and perhaps the next time we get to London,
yes,
we'll look up and
pick up some other things.
Yeah, we'll try to get some more of this. I thank you very much, John Russ. Again, your title and your just a moment of background.
Well, I'm the curator and criminologist at Scotland Yard. The job for curator in this museum has always, for the last 120 years, been for a retired police officer. So I'm a retired police officer and have now did my time. We do 30 years in this country, and I did my 30 years as a police officer in this country, and I'm now a civilian who runs the museum for Scotland Yard.
Okay, I thank you very much, and I'm hoping to get back here one day and finish up this. This
well,
it'll
be a pleasure to talk to you again.
Okay, John, we're going to go, and do you know where I'm going from here?
Yes, you're going to our Central Command Complex, which is our information room, our communication centre.
So here we go, folks. We're going to be very quiet here, and it's a very quiet room, so we're getting a clearance to be in this room here. So I'm going to try to be quiet. We'll get descriptions as we go. Okay, we're walking along. I guess you'll get the, what is that sound? Somebody
working in the building.
My goodness. Oh,
the whole name of the game with Jack the Ripper is writing books about it and making money out of it. Mm-hmm. The truth is totally coincidental to authors. You know, if you write a book and say Jack the Ripper was an inconsequential nobody will buy the book. Mm-hmm. If you write a book and say Jack the Ripper was royalty, Prince Albert Victor, the Duke of Clarence, or you say it was Sir William Gull, the Queen's physician, or you say it was a Masonic conspiracy, that sells books. It's all rubbish, but it sells books. We've always said, Who did the police at the time think Jack the Ripper was? Now, you will obviously know that quite often a police officer has got a very good idea who committed a crime. He may not have enough evidence to prove it in court, but if you draw the file of it under the letter, we think the whole
So
letter
it
was
could
written.
be a setup.
Yeah.
So we still know, they say it could be a member of the royal family, could be, but we still don't know. It's
No.
over 100 years. Whatever papers have come up, and we still don't know who Jack the Ripper was.
Well, the police, we've always said who Jack the Ripper was, but no one listens to us.
Who's that?
Well,
So it may not be the person sending a letter who did the murders, but it could be a reporter coming up with that.
That's right.
Coming up with writing the letter, or the
No, writing the letter. We think the whole
So
letter
it
was
could
written.
be a setup.
Yeah.
So we still know, they say it could be a member of the royal family, could be, but we still don't know. It's over a letter, or the name.
Solve crime, there is the detective's notes who says he thinks he knows it is. And quite often they do know who's done a crime, but they can't prove it.
So who's the person?
So we look back, and when you look back through all the bits and pieces that have ever been written about the people in charge of the case at the time, were all convinced that Jack the Ripper was a man called Aaron Kosminski.